Hello, crafters, and welcome back to the This Calls for Confetti YouTube channel. My name is Deepa from Designs by D, and today I have a fun fall card to share with you today. So I know it's the end of August, we're getting into fall. I thought some bright, vibrant fall colors would be fun to share. So I am actually refashioning some Easter products, including this set called the Happy Sentiment Stamp Set. Now you'll notice that there are no sentiments for fall, but we're going to make this work. I've also got the spring scene builder die set and the spring landscape stencils, and we're going to use this to create a fall scene instead of a spring scene. And this just shows you how versatile these products are and that you can use them for anything. So this video is going to have a mix of ink blending and watercoloring, which we don't normally do. So I really hope that if you haven't dabbled in watercoloring before, especially with This Calls for Confetti products, you might want to give it a try. So I am starting off with some watercolor cardstock. This is cold pressed, so it has some texture to it. It is better to use watercolor cardstock because your colors just show up more vibrantly. It soaks in the colors a lot more. Regular cardstock does not have that ability. So you'll notice I have two panels here. One is just plain old cardstock. One is the watercolor cardstock, and they are both A2 sized. It's what I cut it down to, 5.5 by 4.25. You'll notice that the watercolor cardstock is the one that I used the die on here, and I've positioned it in my stamp positioner. And I am just going to stamp out that big happy stamp that has like the space underneath the PPY, because that's where we're going to put autumn. Um, just stick with me here. We are going to be writing it in, but for now I am using some watercolor safe ink here in order to stamp that out. And now I can start setting up my watercolor. So I've got about 5 pans here. You can use any type of watercolors you have on hand. It doesn't have to be any specific brand or type. Anything works, even if you have like those ones from the store. They're not the best quality, but they also work as well, like maybe the ones your kids have. So I'm just grabbing some water and I'm gonna wet my ink pan first. So I've got the lightest color, and I like to start with the lightest color first and then pull in the darker ones, just because it means I don't have to change out my paintbrush as much. I have a whole bunch of them. You might just have one, so that's how you kind of work it. You have to keep washing off your brush and maybe changing your water if you don't want to mix colors. This is why I start with the lighter color, because then you don't have to really change your water. So I have come in and done a wash with the lightest color. I cleaned off my brush just a tiny bit, and now I am grabbing the next red color and I'm adding that down at the bottom of that bushy tree there. I want the bottom of the tree branches, not the branches, but the leaves, to be like a deeper red and then kind of fade into that lighter orangey yellow. So that's all I'm doing here is I'm building up the color. So I'm going to go from that lightest down to the darker red, and then that bottom pan color before the brown is like a purpley red, which is my deepest color, which I'm going to use at the very bottom of the leaves and then right at the bottom of the tree trunk as well. So all I'm doing is kind of building up my color. So that's my first layer. I used a heat gun to kind of dry that up a bit, and now I can add another layer of color. And that is what watercoloring is all about. It's about building up layers of color and then kind of having that ratio of water to paint perfect for whatever it is you're working with. So if you want more of a wash, you're going to have more water in your paintbrush than the paint. And if you want a deeper color, you're going to have more of the paint versus the water. And that's really what it's about. It's just about balancing that ratio when you're doing watercoloring. Layers and balancing the water to paint ratio is the main thing. So just work with it. And the thing with watercolors is by adding more water, you kind of reactivate the paint. So you can always get it to work for you. If you've added too much paint, I recommend having a paper towel nearby, because then you can just kind of lift up the paint by soaking it into the paper towel, and then you can just kind of work back and forth. So people think that paint is like permanent. Once you've done it, you kind of have to start again. No, you can just keep working your project to get the look that you want. So I am going ahead and adding the brown here for the tree trunks, and down at the bottom I'm going to be using that purpley red to just add like a layer of purple down at the bottom, like the leaves kind of have fallen on the ground. I started off with a very light layer here, and then I will darken it up a little bit. But before I do that, what I want to do, at the end there is kind of just wash off my paintbrush as much as possible and then just use the paintbrush with just the water for the most part to pull out that color and make it fade into white. So that's that trick there. Now, I will mention that when I did finish this, I did kind of have to go over it again to kind of just soften the edges just with just plain water. And that's all you need to do if you find that you have a lot of hard edges in your finished product. So I've just kind of put it aside now to kind of dry. I've got my scene builder stencils here, and keep in mind that this set is amazing because you not only get the actual scene builder stencil, which is the largest stencil here. For example, this one is for the rolling hills. I am using some distress oxide inks, so I'm using like a yellow and a red here, and I'm keeping the color scheme going. You could use green for hills if you wanted to, but I just didn't want to introduce the green. I wanted to keep it this beautiful sunset type color, from like the yellow to the orange to the red to the purple, so I thought that that would work well. You can use whatever color scheme you like, any mix of colors to make the desired result. So this is what I'm saying. You have these extra little bits, which are the cutoffs from that main stencil, which work as masks now. So all of these stencils, the entire thing, work together, the negative and the positive piece of that stencil, in order for you to create the desired result. So not only do you get the stencil to create those rolling hills, you get the mask to mask them off when you want to do the next layer or whatever color you're doing above that hill, which I think is very important in stencils. I think like a while ago they didn't used to include that negative piece, but I feel like it's genius that they do include it now, especially TCFC. You notice with these products here give you that negative piece, which is amazing. So I've gone ahead and blended all my colors. I went from that yellow to the orange to the red to the purple all the way up, and it looks like a little bit of a mess, but once you put the die cut on top, it looks really good. I did add a splash of water droplets here to give it a bit of like an ethereal type look, a nice, I don't know, I find it gives it like a nice kind of glistening look. So I just added some droplets of water and lifted them off with a paper towel or a towel. And now for our sentiment. There is no autumn in the stamp set. So I think the genius of the set is that you can do this. So I am just using some archival ink markers here, and I'm just writing in autumn. So I used a pencil first, and then I'm going over it with my marker. And I did kind of thicken the letters a little bit so that they would stand out a little more. And you can see, I mean, I know that I wrote it there, and you know that I wrote it there, but I don't know if your recipient would know. So try your best to write that out neatly. And I mean, if you really wanted to, you could kind of get a use the stamp set. There is Halloween in there, so I thought maybe I could partially stamp out the ALL in Halloween and then maybe just add the F. You could have done that too. It's completely up to you. I thought that fall was a little short, so I put autumn in there instead. And if you don't want to do that, there's always just the full happy, and then maybe you can find another set that you have that might have fall or autumn in it to work for you. But I really like this design where the autumn is in the happy sentiment. It's really fun. So I've gone ahead and I've added the watercolored die cut that we had for that foreground of the trees and the sentiment. And I added that with some foam adhesive so that it kind of gets propped up a bit. So you kind of have a separation between your foreground and that background, the ink blended background. And you can see that I just use similar colors. They're not coordinating colors. The watercolor paints don't coordinate with the ink colors. They're different brands, but you can see how they all kind of mesh together well. So that I think is a really important point to make, that you might want to swatch your watercolors and your inks to make sure that they match up well when you're picking them out. If you don't want to do that matching up, you could always watercolor the background too using the stencils, and that also works. Maybe we'll save that for another video. But I did jazz this up using the Spring Has Sprung cover die set. I cut out all of those little leaf fronds and flowers from the from that gold glitter cardstock, and now I'm just adding these gold glitter accents, which I think really kind of bring this design to life, especially with that water droplet background. This just adds that extra shine and highlights all the color. It kind of breaks up the color a bit because it is a lot of the yellow, orange, red, and purple. So I think that it adds like a nice little design. And you can see that I'm adding just some of these around the sentiment there as well. in kind of like a sprinkled fashion. If you don't have the patience for this, you could also just go to the this calls for confetti store and grab some of the confetti and maybe just put some of that around, which would look just as beautiful. So everything that I've used has been linked down in the description below. This is a really simple card to put together, and I hope that it's inspired you to create something similar yourself. Thanks for joining us today, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.